Hello, with the wave 1 of the reprint campaign shipping as I record this, I wanted to make a video with some tips for any new players getting it or anyone just starting out. I will make this video into two sections. The first part is gonna be about the voyage phase and the second part is gonna be about battles. So let's hop right into it. Let's say you're exploring, finding new tiles, adventuring and all that, and you finish your story card in this city here and you get a new one. This story card, let's say, tells you to go back to T04. Well, in this case, you are forced to backtrack. You need to go back to a tile you were, and that is usually bad. You do not want to backtrack. In this case, it's inevitable. When you are forced to do so, you want to try and still explore as many new tiles as possible and take a new path to that old tile. In this case, it's simple. Instead of going up and then left, you go left and then up. This means you explored one new tile. It is what it is. Exploring new tiles is often still, even if you lose some days taking a longer route, it tends to be worth it over backtracking over multiple already known tiles. Why is it important? Well, exploring new tiles gives you a lot of new opportunities. First, adventures, titans, cities, progress, other stuff I won't spoil right now. When you go back on a tile you've already explored, you get nothing. You get Doom. Do you like Doom? I don't think you like Doom. That's the only thing you can gain twice if you restep. So, yeah, avoid backtrack. Next up, I want to talk about resources. On this Argo sheet over here, there are a lot of resources, some more obvious than others. First, crafting materials. These are quite self-explanatory. Use them, don't hoard them up, because it's not worth it. At the start, primordials don't give all that much. They give what you need to craft starting gear, and when they level up, they start giving more and more and more. Endgame crafting gear uses quite a lot of materials. Hoarding up from level 1 won't help all that much. It's much better to just craft the gear in the present, use that gear to beat harder bosses give more materials, etc. So yeah, don't hoard it up, use it, get the best stuff you can get. Secondly, I want to talk about Argo Fate, another really important resource. You can use Argo Fate, increase it. Each time you want to use it, you increase it, and you can get special effects from it. I won't spoil exactly what that means, but it's usually good for you. You want to always have this over 2 when you start a fight, because fights reduce it every time. And it's a very powerful resource. You don't want to reach 10 because that's game over. But as long as you can spare it, you want to use it. Do not hoard it. There's no need. It's very rare for you to just get 6 Argo Fate and just lose on the spot. And even then the game tends to have protections about that. So don't worry that much about it. Avoid getting to 8, 9, that's bad. But as long as you stay 5, 6, even 7, you can live with that. Use it when you need it. It can save you a lot more. Another resource that's a bit harder to think about as a resource is hull and crew. When you reach 0, you lose on them. That's what they do. But there are adventures where you can often get the option: lose hull, get something; lose crew, get something. In that case, if you're high on either of them, it can be worth it. Like, you can lose one hull to get some resources, or there are cases where the game tells you, okay, you can raise Argo Fate but you won't lose some hull. Well, if you're already at 7 Argo Fate but 4 on hull, it's not worth it. These are also a resource. Think about them in that way. If you're high on them, You can spare losing some for other things. If you're low on them, well, you can't go any lower because you're gonna lose. Another resource I want to talk about is Sisyphus tears. They let you restart the fight. That makes them very strong for those scenarios where you just lose all your titans, you 3 Argonauts died and everything just went wrong. They're perfect for that. Still, they're a bit rare. I would advise against using them on every fight where a titan dies or slightly inconvenient happens. But when a bad fight happens, when it really goes wrong, don't hoard them either, just use them. 2 Argonauts died? No, that's a restart. Your whole team died? No. You lost 3 crew because Hecaton somehow did his routine? No, just restart. They're also a resource here. So, what next? Well, let me talk about research. Sadly, this is one I can't really show on Tabletop Simulator because the full tech tree is not here, obviously. But I can still talk about it. Aeon Trespass has a pretty long tech tree with a lot of choices. In the end, you do get all, if not most of them. But the path you take there is pretty important. Because you can stagnate and try to get all the starting tech and then all the mid game tech and all the late game tech, or you can just take a path and go from early to mid to late game quite quickly and then start going back to catch up. It's usually a better idea try and get to the late game tech as fast as you can. Because if you end up fighting a level 4 primordial with endgame tech, you're gonna be fine. But it's also possible to reach the end game with mid game tech, if you went and took everything possible from the early game and then the mid game. That kinda sucks, because you aren't properly prepared for those fights yet. It's not gonna be the end of the world. The bosses don't scale up so massively that if you don't have endgame tech they will just murder you. But it's also not gonna be that easy. It's gonna be tougher for you. So try to pick a path. Pick one of the bosses that you think looks cooler and go down its tech tree. Reach the end, and after you're there, you can go back, take all the things you missed. It will make your life easier. And last but not least, I want to talk about a bit adventures. They are very important during your cycle. And what I want to talk about is the track here. You want to complete as many of them. Simple as that. And starting them is also quite nice, because the best rewards come from the start and from the end. The middle, well, it's random, you can get anything, who knows. There is tech in the game that allows you to slightly change what adventures you go on. Use that and try to get as many as them completed and started. I really recommend starting as many as you can. Just if you can finish one, go for it. The rewards at the end are definitely worth it. So, now that I'm done with the voyage phase, let's get to battles, my favorites. So, I will open up a new one here and let's go to Hecaton. Well, before a fight though, what do you bring to a fight? Well, first let's talk about the whole Titan team before I delve a bit deeper. In a team, there are two main roles. You have a tank, or two, or more, and damage dealers. At the start of cycle 1 they aren't all that different, but they do get more unique as you progress through the game. At the start though, it's quite simple. The tank has a shield, the non-tanks do not. That's it. Also, at the start of cycle 1, tanks are not that much tankier than non-tanks, so you will need to spread damage around and all that. But as you progress, tanks get sturdier, the gear and all that makes them much more resistant, and you tend to want them to take more attacks after that. Still, even at the beginning, you do want your tanks to take the harder hitting attacks because they tend to have a shield, they tend to be a bit more resistant. Okay, so what does a damage dealer do? If a tank tanks, well, a damage dealer is a bit more versatile and it depends a lot on what you want them to do. And here I want to talk about three types of titans: the opening titan, the tempo titan, and the finishing titan. What do they do? Well, it's all based mostly on tokens: break, openings. Opening titans are better when, well, not exactly better, but they're good enough when you do not have tokens in the pool. Like, they can do an attack and still wound even if there's nothing in there or if there's very little. For example, a boat mace. The boat mace is a decent starting opening weapon. Why? Well, in this case it has 2 precision and some good dice, and it also plays a token. It's self-sufficient, it's well to continue from, it's just decent. And it's also a pretty good tank weapon, so it works as a combo there. So, you use the boat mace, make the first attack, place a token. Okay, what's next? Well, next up, we have a tempo titan. A tempo titan uses something like the well knives, for example. Why? Well, well knives works better when it has tokens in the pool. The more, the merrier here. And it also just ends up placing even more tokens, because more hits, more openings, better time for the next titan. So after the boat mace titan attacked, he will place 1 break, and let's say he also places an opening. This makes the well knives more likely to hit, thus placing even more openings, maybe even 3, and 1 break from the Kratos table. So after that, after we use the well knives, we can end up to the finisher titan. What is a finisher titan? Well, it's the guy that hits the big BP3s. You always want one of these because hitting some of them, especially when the rage is low, can be tough. So let's say Great Tree Club, or if you go all the way, Thief, I'm gonna butcher this, Kopesh. Well, these weapons have 0 precision, this one has -1, so you really need opening tokens for this to hit. And they tend to have better dice, but usually it costs something. In this case it's commit, 0 precision, and not the best tokens for a 2-handed weapon, unlike the well knights, for example. Or yeah, not too many weapons to show here, sadly. Okay, so what does each of these titans look to have? An opening titan wants a weapon with high precision, I've already said, and another keyword that's very important for an opening titan, that is not here sadly, is auto break. Auto break pretty much adds a break token to the pool of the attacking titan, so it's pretty much a self break token for that attack. Well, what does a tempo titan want? Tempo titan usually cares a lot about a strong weapon. First of all, they need a decent weapon because they will be the ones that wound BP2s usually, and later in the fight with more rage even BP3. You want them to have a strong weapon, and usually you care a lot about having a lot of tokens. Well knives here is, for example, is great because it can place up to 3 tokens, it has a reposition to great tempo weapon. Okay, finisher titans. You want the big bonk, the hardest hitting stuff. Just Thief Kopesh here, for example, was great with the well knives because well knives place a lot of openings, this needs a lot of openings. Simple as that. And Thief Kopesh hits harder, like one whole red dice in the early game of ATO is pretty big. There also are more supportive weapons. There's a lot to combo here with, but I'll talk that a bit later. So, how do you build individual titans now? Well, there are two steps here. First, you want in each cycle to have some specific keywords usually. The first one, reflex. This is in every cycle. Reflex is overpowered. You will want every single titan to have a source of reflex. Now, this doesn't exactly always mean each titan needs a piece of gear with reflex. Some titans can get it in other ways. There are bosses where you can actually live without it, but you have to plan specifically about that. It can't be, oh, I just don't want to take it, not gonna think about it. Usually you either take it or you have a specific plan. One of those plans could be, it's not here. Okay, one of the plans could be having one of the Argo abilities that gives reflex. That means even if a titan doesn't have it, you can still give it to him. For example, if a titan does not really need, let's say he has a ranged weapon, you don't expect him to be much in the attack range of the boss. Well, even in that case, having an Argo ability with reflex can be very nice in the case where something just goes wrong and you need it. Now, more specific to cycle 1, another really useful keyword is spring harness. No, not spring harness, stand up. What does stand up mean? Well, it stands you up. You can get knocked down. Getting knocked down means you lose a turn. That's very bad, obviously. So, if you get knocked down, but you have the stand up ability, just use it. No more standing down. So, you also want all this on all your titans during cycle 1 because a lot of bosses do it to you. Well, again, you can't really have it. Mostly there's not enough gear in the early game and later it's not worth it. Well, how do you do it? Firstly, you do give some titans the gear. You give them spring harness. Mostly the tank. You have your tank over here with his big armor, his big shield. He will get targeted more. So you really want stand up on him. But for the other titans, they might not get attacked as much. Stand up on them might not be as worth it. Still, that does not mean you do not want to have it as an option because you never know when they're gonna get targeted, they're gonna get knocked down and it's gonna ruin your day. An option also comes again from Argo abilities. There's an Argo ability that can just stand you up, easy, perfect. Another solution comes from, reflex, because it's OP. You can use reflex in a lot of cases during, here we go. No, not a good example. Let's see. Okay, on this attack, for example, it has knockdown. Well, it also has a reaction window. You can usually use reaction windows to use reflex. Let's say Hecaton just attacked green over here. You use a reaction with reflex. This is the reflex gear. You use it, and yeah, you're no longer in range of the knockdown. He just does not knock down you anymore. Easy. That's also an alternative way to deal with it. In each cycle, there is different things you have to worry about and obviously different ways to deal with it. So yeah, usually you will have to build your titans around that or have an alternative ways to deal with it. Obviously there are also menus cards. There's one that, damn, why isn't any of them here? There's one that stands you up, also very useful. Well, what's next? After you get past the required gear you need in each cycle, there's the combo you need in each build. Usually you will have a weapon and you usually want to have it work synergistically with the rest of your Titan or with the team. Easy example, Great Club Tree. Is it here? No, it is not. Okay, better example. Ballista gun and makeshift. Well, this one allows you to use the ballista gun basically twice before you have to rest and unexhaust. There are also ways to unexhaust. No, this doesn't have. There are also ways to unexhaust gear. For example, ballista gun can be used with some gear that allows you to move, maybe like reflex. And instead of having to move during your turn, you can use your move action to rest and unexhaust it. There are also combos with other Titans, or for example, there's RS Olos and the tank. That's an easy one. You use this, tank get priority, turns the primordial, pretty much you guarantee the tank is gonna get targeted if you play it right. Now, combos can go way further than this, especially as you go in cycles. Perfect example here. Let's say you use ballista gun and Kratos copies. Well, you use the ballista gun when you're far away, you use the copish when you're close, but they also have another synergistic effect. As you can see, ballista gun, when you're over 7 danger, it deals extra breaks. This also lets you take danger willingly. Let's say you're on 6 danger, you use this ability, you're on 7, you will be able to use the empowered ballista gun. Small synergy here, but it's something, and if you look for stuff like this, they can be a lot more impactful. So let's talk about more impactful one. This comes from combining 2 Titans in this case. 2 RS Olos, 2 reflexes. So how does that work? Let's say we have Hecaton over here and 2 Titans, both with RS Olos that lets you take the priority token and turn the primordial, and reflex that lets you move 1 space during the primordial turn, during a reflex window. Well, how does that work? Let's take the AI deck here, and let's say that my Titans are here, and I'm going to move them exactly 6 away from Hecaton. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, that's okay. I'm gonna move him here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Why did I move him here? Well, it's quite simple. In Aeon Trespass, you can do something that's called an out of range evade. What that means is that if a boss draws a card and picks you as a target, priority target in range, let's say green is the priority target, and he would move 6 there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, I miscalculated that. Okay, let's go here instead. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. He would get to you, and then he would hit you, knock you back, all that bad stuff. Well, what if I do not want that? I have reflex over here. I use my reflex, get the fate, and all that, and I move 1. Well, what happens now? My Titan is suddenly at 7 away, and Hecaton is still here. So, Hecaton draws this card. I use this reaction window over here to use the reflex. And then Hecaton still attempts to get to my Titan by moving 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He cannot. What happens? Well, he fails. Pretty much what's called an out of range evade. And yeah, that was that. Now, what's the combo I was talking with RS Olos? Well, let's say it's my turn now again, because he wasted his. And blue here also has RS Olos. What will he do? Well, he will again move exactly 6 away from Hecaton. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. and he will stay here. So he is exactly in range if Hecaton comes. And then he will use Ares Olos, take the Fate, and Hecaton will turn towards that Titan. Now Hecaton will draw a card, and whatever it says, closest Titan in front, in range, he will try to move. But before I do that, I use Reflex, and he fails again. Poor guy. But in this case, it's a perfect example of how the game can still sometimes screw you over. It's not as easy as this looks. For example, in this case, he performed a signature, and the signature is another attack. Each heals, so he would come, attack, do all that nasty stuff. But even in that case, we still did avoid one of the attacks. And guess what? Green can still do the same trick back on Hecaton. First, she would have to unexhaust this gear. I'm not sure. Okay. This gear is exhausted. Okay. Actually, the reflex is exhausted because I used it for an out of range evade. Well, first I have to spend my movement action, my attack action to unexhaust this. Then I'm going to spend one fate to use Ares Olos, turn Hecaton towards the Green Titan, and then again move exactly 6 away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, going here. When Hecaton would draw a new card, he would choose that Titan. I would again use Reflex to get away, out of range evade. Easy. Of course, in a real game, it's not that easy. He has reaction cards. He can do stuff like this that just fucks you over a bit. He has zone attacks. Things can go wrong. But even if you manage to do this once, twice during a fight, it can be huge. Because this can ignore AI 3 cards. It can really change the course of a battle a lot. And this is just a combo with starting gear that's even on the tabletop simulator. The synergies you can end up with later in the game can be quite insane. So, now that I talked about how to build some titans, what do you do with these titans during a fight? Well, first and foremost, positioning. Positioning is king in this game. You can either position yourself in such a way that you out of range evade the bosses like I've showed you before, or you can be positioned like this. The boss draws a card, let's say this card, he attacks you, and well, he does knockback 5 on you, and you're off the cliff and you are dead, because Hecaton level 2 kills you if he knocks you back off the board of the edge. Positioning is the difference between life and death. Simple as that. So, how do you position yourself? It depends a lot on each boss, and you will have to figure that out for each of them. But let's start with some little tips for cycle 1 at least. For Hecaton, it's quite simple. Do not stand at the edge of the board. Try to stay towards the middle, or if you are close to the board, have it be so Hecaton is behind you, like in this case. So if he knocks you back toward the middle. Also, avoid being knocked back into obstacles. If you get knocked back into an obstacle, you get knocked down and you suffer some damage. Also, avoid getting stomped on. If Hecaton looks at blue over here and he wants him, and green is in the way, well, Hecaton will just go over her, deal some damage, and knock her down. That's not good. That's all positioning stuff. So, how do you want to position him? Well, first you want to stay out of the way of the priority target. If blue is the priority target here, you do not want titans in his path. You want Hekaton to push you either towards the edge but you are far enough, or ideally Hekaton pushes you towards the center. In the worst case scenario, you can block yourself with obstacles. Like in this scenario, it's better to be here and just be pushed into this column and just get knocked down, instead of being here and just flying off the edge. For the Labyrinthaurus, let's show that as well. In this case over here, he plays by a few different rules. Instead of pushing you around, he's the one running around the board. He will just trample and move all the way and place labyrinth tile everywhere. So, one of the main mechanics that only happens on level 2. Do not play with this on level 1. Okay? On trample, whenever he gets instructed to do it, for example, by the signature card as an after attack, he will do a full move forward. So let's say attack blue, finish the attack, he will do a full move of 6 forward. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then turn around to look at all the titles. What does trample do if he, well, tramples you? Firstly, knocks you down, deals some damage. The bad part is if he steps on you again with trample while you are down, well, he will most likely kill you in that case, because you draw an O-ball. Well, what does this mean? A few simple rules. For him, you do not want to stay in front of him. If you attack him from the side. Because if he does trample, he will just go forward and ignore you. If you are attacked by him, let's say he attacked you with his signature, you can use reflex, and with reflex, get out of the way. Easy. One thing you also want to avoid, if your Titan blue is here, you do not want to position with green behind him, because if he attacks and tramples, well, he's gonna trample both of them. That's the simple stuff. Something more complex here, for example, could be predicting where he will charge. Let's say blue is here, right? What do I do with green? Well, it is very possible with an attack that Labyrinthaurus will attack blue and then trample. Well, he tramples 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, look at this. He just finished his trample and green is adjacent to the boss. What does this mean? Well, let's say she has a weapon. She can attack with that weapon, and then instead of having to use her move action like blue to get to the boss, she's already there. She can now react to whatever the boss does, maybe another trample, a labyrinth, whatever, and then just move, or maybe unexhaust a weapon if she has something that can be exhausted, or whatever she wants with that movement. With proper positioning, green here obtained a move action because she was in the right place. Of course, this can get more complex. Against Labyrinthaurus, you can make multiple groups of 2 and 2 titans to bounce him around, or lots of strategies, all that are based on positioning. And this is one of the first parts you have to figure out. Well, how do you figure out how to position yourself? That depends a lot on the targeting of a boss. Let's go back to Hekaton. Here we go. Hekaton is quite a dumb boss. The first thing you can check for a boss is the targeting of their signature. It's usually the most common one. Hekaton, closest titan in front, in range. If I look through this, you will see this a lot. Closest titan in front, in range. So if green is the closest Titan in front in range, guess who's gonna be targeted most of the time? Yep, green. Of course, he's not that dumb. I won't spoil all the targeting he has, I'm gonna let you have the fun of figuring it out. But he does more than just targeting closest Titan in front in range. But after you do figure it all out, you can properly predict what the boss will do and all its options. Same with Labyrinthos. Where is it? So here you can see furthest Titan in front in range. That's a bit different than Hackathon. If green is here, blue is here, closer a bit, it is possible that he will target blue instead of green. That changes the positioning of it a bit. Again, he also has some other targeting options. You will have to figure that all out, but as a baseline, that's the first prediction you can get. Later bosses get even more interesting stuff, and yeah, from there starts the positioning, the targeting, and how to predict a boss. Well, what do we do with all this predicting? Well, you take damage. After you predict what the boss does, you can figure out ways on how to mitigate its cards and how to deal with it. This depends a lot from cycle to cycle. In cycle 1 is very different from cycle 3, but there are a few things that stay similar. The main one is at the start of a cycle, your tanks are not that great, so you will want to spread the damage around. First attack you want to go on the tank, second attack you want to go on another Titan, third on another Titan, etc. As you progress in gear, bosses also get deadlier. That means that you want most of the attacks to go on the tank, especially the deadly ones. You want AI trees to go on the tank, not on your squishy Titans that can just blow up from a single AI tree. Even later you can split up some of the damage. Let's say you want your other Titans to take AI 1 cards, so they power up some cards that require danger, or just take the edge of a bit of a tank, because an AI 1 is not gonna kill a Titan, even if ungeared. Like, this deals what, 4 damage at worst. With powered up primordials, it's still not gonna kill a Titan, not this card at least. So a secondary Titan can kill it, this will deal some damage, you can power up some stuff, pretty great. But when an AI tree comes, this can just melt, this can deal over 10 danger to an unprepared Titan, and yeah, you want them on the tanks. As a rule of thumb here, even in the early game, low AI cards, non-tanks, high AI cards go on tanks. Simple as that. But well, enough about taking shit from the bosses. How about we do some wounding of our own? Well, the most basic rule of thumb is simple. Hit them as often as you can. If you can wound the boss, it's usually the right choice. There are exceptions. If your strategy, there are strategies on some bosses where you do not want to wound every turn. But even with non-unique strategies and all that, there are still some reasons to not wound every attack. Let's talk about some of them. Well, it's late in the fight. The boss is nearly fully upgraded and all that. It has 5 AI trees and somehow an AI 1 remain in the deck. The boss still has 7 HP, so you can't kill it with one final Titan attack, even if it's a BP3 on top. Well, what do you do in this case? You do not want to attack. Simple as that. the difference between an AI1 and an AI3 is very big. In this case, you just chill. Let's say blue can still attack, and this BP on 3 on top, and let's say he can even wound it. You still don't want to do that because you want to draw this AI1. Like, it deals 4 damage, you're gonna live through that, you're gonna be fine. But some of this AI3 stuff is not fine. So you just wait a turn, you let him do the headbutt, deal some meaningless damage in some cases, and then you just go with all your titans and bash him down and kill him. What are some other scenarios where you might not want to attack, to wound? Well, it can also be about how is it called, BP3s on top, or sometimes you might even want to rush BPs, try to wound the boss faster. What does that mean? In the early game of cycles 1, nothing, you can't really do that, but quite quickly you do get some stuff that lets you how is it called, that lets you shuffle the decks or change the order of the BPs. And let's say the boss has 8 HP and you have 1 more attack. Well, if it's a BP1 on top, you ain't killing that, but maybe you can get a BP3 on top with some of these methods. Well, in that case, it can be a good idea. You get rid of the BP1 on top, you put the BP3, and because the BP3 deals 2 wounds instead of 1 if you actually wound it, and the boss has 8 HP in this fictional scenario, if you actually wound this card, well, kill the boss. While otherwise, if you only wounded this BP1, you would have not killed the boss. So, yeah, one more thing to talk about here is about just having fun with discovering it all. There's a lot to find out in this game. There's a lot of strategies, a lot of weaknesses the bosses have, a lot of unique combos and synergies between single titan, multiple titans, the whole team. You can have some insane strategies, like really insane. There were some that were so good they were nerfed, some that probably weren't even discovered yet. So yeah, overall the game is not forgiving from that point of view. It will kill you, even if you have the best strategies. If you roll 5 ones in a row, yeah, better use that tier maybe. But usually the better your strategies, the better your combos, the better your synergies, just increase the chances of winning here. And at least for me, it's very fun finding them out, so might as well be for you. Just think about all the things you can do to kill a boss better, and that will help. So yeah, I hope this video helps some of you with the bosses and the introduction to Aeon Trespass. If any of you wants more in-depth guides and all that, I did make on Board Game Geek a guide for each boss, but I do have to warn you that goes into full spoilers on them. I fully go into all their AI cards on what they do on some of them. I go on what their BP do, all their traits, and some pretty busted strategies on them that can just kill them pretty easily. Some of them are not as easily cheesable, some like Hackathon, but yeah, I do talk about the strategies there. And if you want to go in blind, I do not recommend reading the guides. But if you're struggling, or if you just want to see that stuff, they are there. So yeah, well, hope this helped, and good luck on your Odyssey. Bye bye.